postures of love. Those writings were in the Cathar manual. That's why they're phrased in terms of client and facilitator. But in truth, if our objective or the goal that we seek to achieve is being a Christos being, to integrate as an avatar, it implies that we are a healing facilitator. On a planetary level, that's what Christos beings do, just by the fact that their presence is there. The world is your client. And that applies to the environment as well as to people. The postures of love are very, very useful, particularly in the personal relationship sector, because this is where most people get tangled up in knots. And if you made a knot when you were in your teens, say with a male-female relationship, you tend to recreate that knot for quite a while in other male-female relationships until you work it out. And if you really trace things back, you can usually trace the exact same knot back to your relationship with your opposite gender parent. And that came from another issue in another time frame, another life. So if we can begin to realize that the L word, the love word, has been so abused on this planet as an excuse for energy vampiring. We've been manipulated by guilt that's attached to love. Oh, if you love me, you'll do this, even if it's not good for you. There's a lot of people that go into spiritual development and they feel the call of their spirit and they want to follow it. And it's not really taking them anywhere in a negative space, but their partners or their family, their mothers, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, their friends, don't like the feeling because they're not getting that frequency. So they'll try to say, oh, don't do that. How could you? You mustn't like me. Oh, how terrible. Look at how long we've been friends. Or look how long we've been together. How can you abandon me? Isn't it terrible? You're only trying to get spiritual. You know, nobody said I'm abandoning you. There are manipulation games all over the place that have been going on for centuries and centuries between human beings that have to do with not love, but power. So often the word love is used to hide a reality of power struggle that's taking place. Very often people seek love from another. They think they're seeking love, but they feel powerless or frightened in their own lives, and so they're actually seeking somebody to attach to suck energy from in order to feel safe. Women were taught this for ages when it went into the patriarchal dominion of women, where women were rendered powerless. We've had a cultural pattern that has brought us up to where we tend to be very frightened if we don't have a male to attach to. And we think it's because we want a male to love. We're taught that. But that's usually not what it is at all. We want somebody to make us feel safe because we lost touch with the ability that we have the power to make ourselves feel safe. So very often women, unknowingly, women don't mean to do it, that from the time they're little girls, they start with daddy, and then it moves on to the next one, to the next one. We get so scared because we're told, we're women, we've been told so long, and it's in the genetic race program. It's like a repeating CD player in your gene code that tells you, you are female gender, you are less worthy, you are less powerful, you are weak compared to strong male. That means if this is a hostile world, which it appears to be sometimes, you're in trouble unless you have a male. That's got translated into things like the financial issues, where the woman was stuck in a role of playing homemaker while the male went out and earned the money. So a lot of times, even now, even with women's lib and the fact that many women are, financially independent, there's still a lot of women that carry a pattern of fear of dealing with the financial world head on because it's scary. It's overwhelming. It's all paperwork meant to mess with your head and take your power, when you get into the financial world the way it is. It takes a huge amount of energy to function in the financial world. Like things you'd like to put your attention on, usually it isn't taxes, it isn't all of this stuff that if you're going to be part of the financial world that you have to deal with. So there's also a payoff for the old kind of approach to the male-female relationship from the woman's part, where it's like, okay, I'll let him be the guy, and he can go deal with all the paperwork and stuff so I don't have to focus on that. There's also the same trips that men end up playing on women. For eons now, men have been trained to look at women as objects, like a couch or a car or a house. They're supposed to look like this, they're supposed to act like this, doesn't matter who they are. But this is the model they're supposed to live up to. And if they don't live up to this, they're unlovable. Well, that feels awful to be on the other side of that one. Women feel this in our cultures. Right now there's a huge split between men and women, even as they're trying to come together, because we have been trained to use power struggle under the guise of love, where we think we're in a love relationship. But it isn't love that's happening. Love is a state of vibrational harmonization. where literally the frequencies blend and energy flows. The opposite of that is power struggle, where this energy tries to pull, and then this one, and this one, and this one. Usually, relationships start with that little flutter of vibrational harmonization. That means you each have something in your gene code that brings you together. Then there will be these areas where the power struggle starts. That's where you have reverse things in your DNA templates, where literally you're objectifying through the relationships. And it's not just male-female. It can be with, mother-daughter, father-son, vice versa. If we begin to understand that we have a choice in choosing what postures of love we're going to apply, first of all, that'll immediately not put you in a category of manipulation. You won't be able to be manipulated by somebody saying to you, well, you didn't do this so you don't love me. Says, of course I did. I still love you. But right now I'm tough loving you. If you'd like me to soft love you, please don't overstep this boundary that you're trying to pull my power. You learn to talk to yourself differently first. You learn to say, I am good enough. No matter what standard you set for yourself, so often men and women are taught to say, no matter what it is, it's not good enough. Well, I made it this far, but it should have been here. I wish I had this color hair, or those color eyes, or that shaped body, or that size bank account. We're taught to not love and not accept ourselves as we are. We need to realize we're perfect. I can say to myself, I am perfect. I can say that you are perfect too. That doesn't mean there's some preset standard of what perfect is supposed to be. There are things we can strive to achieve, to expand, but at every moment we are perfectly who we are. And if we let that be okay and get off our own case about it, we will naturally expand and evolve into the things that we are interested in growing and becoming. But when we begin to beat up on ourselves, well, someday I'll be lovable. Someday when I don't feel guilty because I didn't do this when I was 10 years old, or I didn't do this when I was 30 years old, or I did this and I made this mess in my life and it affected people, so I feel bad, so I'm not good enough, so I can't love me, I'm not lovable. We have to be able to love ourselves first and to choose love. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. Just grin at yourself. And it's silly. You start laughing when you do it because you kind of, this is silly. But it isn't silly because you're telling the part of you that you've been beaten up on all these years, that probably started with your parents beating up on it when you were small, they didn't mean to. But you need to be able to say, I love you to you. You need to be the most important person in your universe. That doesn't mean you have to be egocentric or selfish. It means you have to put you first and your connection to Source first if you're going to have to be able to hold your power in a way and hold your love in a way that you can give it to others. Give yourself permission to love you first, and then you cannot give to somebody a frequency that you do not have. If you are carrying self-hatred and self-loathing inside of you, you will try to be loving toward people, but there will be an undertone of what almost feels to them like anger. People will frequently say, are you angry with me? And you'll think about it, no, because you weren't really angry with them. Somehow there managed to be a field signature, an energy signature coming off you that said, your words are, your mouth is saying, I love you, and the feeling is saying, no, I don't, right? If we can harmonize this in our own bodies, this is part of our own shadow self, the part of our self that's connected to the part of our DNA template that's running a reverse mathematical program from the divine blueprint. That's our shadow self. It's a tangible reality in our DNA. It's a chemical reality in our DNA. That part of ourselves needs to heal. And the more we tell that part of ourselves that it is lovable, and it can grow, and it will. It doesn't mean, say, you're perfect, you don't have to grow anymore. Life is continual growth and expansion. You'll never reach the ultimate perfect because it always changes. It moves. It's like a target you're trying to aim for that moves every time you throw a dart at it. So love is very important. Starting with loving yourself, going into soft love. Soft love is preferable whenever possible. It feels good. It's soft and cozy and cuddly. It's when people give each other hugs and they're just totally open and their heart chakras are totally open. That feels wonderful when that can happen. But if there's any power games that either person has in that type of situation, you'll end up in a power struggle and an energy vampiring happening to the person who holds their heart center open the most. So there's a way, that's where you take you begin to set the boundaries. They're loving boundaries, but the tough love boundaries. Say, okay, well, in loving myself, I know that these are the things that mean something to me. And I'm not going to let anybody compromise those. That's how I'm going to honor myself, love myself, and the God within me. Then, if somebody's trying to cross those boundaries, you can say, excuse me. This is where assertiveness, not aggressiveness, but assertiveness comes in. Aggressiveness would be defense. You don't need to defend yourself. That's aggressive reaction. What you need to do is assert yourself. That's simply holding your power, saying, excuse me, it doesn't work that way in my world. If we're going to share a world together, I will treat you this way because I care about you very much. You can treat me this way too. And if you don't, if you continue to throw stuff at me, like when you have abusive relationships or something, a classic example, this is what's going to happen. This is a boundary. It's harming me. I'm not going to let that happen anymore. I love you dearly. However, if you cannot stop this behavior, I will do this in order to remove myself from its effects. But if you put that on the table, be willing to back it up. Don't make any threat you can't fulfill. If you're like at home with somebody and you're having a abusive relationship or something, don't threaten to leave unless you absolutely mean it. Because if you do that once and you don't, the next time, the boundary means nothing. It's like a child. When people, one of the interesting things that you can stop your brain from getting engaged too much in issues with people, in yourself, you have a thing come up between, an argument or something come up between somebody, and you feel yourself getting trapped into it too. You feel your emotions coming up and you want to have an issue with somebody. If you say to yourself, how old am I right now? And then, how old are they right now? And sometimes you can break it up by asking them, how old are you right now? I'm 4. Where you start to realize there are these emotional body patterns that are getting tied up into the conversation, taking the totally off logical stuff, where you're just throwing energy at each other. If you can break it up by realizing there are different age levels that you carry right in your body, and if there were stuck things at age 4 or stuck things at age 10, they're going to come out until they're unstuck. They're going to come out in different types of patterns, different types of attitudes or issues or ways of presenting yourself, and other people are going to do it too. If we can start to realize that we all have our inner child with us, that sometimes is tangled up with our shadow self. They're different things. The inner child isn't always in the shadow. Sometimes it's the part that'll let us go outside and look at a nice covered pond, down at the feet and go, yeah, and run, no matter even if you're 90. You know what I mean? So the inner child part will be the part of you that can be in touch with the joy as well as with the issues that came up. If we can just be aware when we go into studying heavy stuff that has to do with Templar mechanics and major political dramas taking place on the planet and in the universe, if we can approach it still with the love, knowing that the love is there. Love is a choice. And any moment you have a choice of primary 2 things in relation to directing your energy: love or judgment. Love or judgment. Now you can love while assessing situations, but if you're assigning situations to the value of the persons involved in them, you block the love. It is always worth choosing love, because you will learn through that. If you judge somebody, that means you don't want to hear anymore. You're not going to take a backflow of energy from them. You don't want to understand. I've met people, and it's amazed me, a person who was very dear to us, there's some issues that came up around with other people that had been in our groups. And the person was a wonderful teacher, knew our material technically in excellence, to the point where he was correcting everybody else that wasn't perfect. He didn't mean to do that, but he did. There was a point where we tried to resolve the issues that were happening with certain group members and this individual because of the perfectionism, because of, well, this is the way it is and nobody's good enough because they're not doing it, perfectly, which is not an attitude of love, it's an attitude of judgment. That got to the point where we tried to point this out in the group of people were talking together, and the person blew up and just said, I don't want to resolve it, basically. Some people will choose judgment because that's their whole modus operandi. They've lived their life through that. They do it to themselves. It's usually the people that judge you the harshest are doing the same to themselves. And they judge you and make you lesser in order to make themselves feel like there's something, better. So we have a choice to not get trapped in those patterns, but sometimes the choice can be very, very blurry. Because this is why, psychiatrists and things make a good living in our societies. Because there's a lot of our brains and our emotion, our brain function, our emotion, our mental body stuff, our subconscious mind, whatever that is, that we tend to not understand. And things come up for us, and we don't know what the heck to do with them. What is interesting is eventually, as spirituality becomes understood, psychiatry will become obsolete, and the psychiatrists will become spiritual leaders because they will understand the mechanics. When we talk about subconscious mind, where a lot of your feeling stuff comes from, you can have a lot of stuff in there. It has to do with your DNA strand number 2 and your strand number 1. All right, your emotional body is partly blocked right now. So there's a part of it that's literally beyond the view of the three-dimensional mind. It can't see it. That part accretes energy and pulls energy in and creates things that are called subpersonality imprints. Subpersonality imprints they can be the beginning stage of, split personality, but they're not. Everybody has subpersonality imprints, where if you have one idea and one part of you wanted to do this and the other part wanted to do that, you did this. What happened to the other part? It gets stuffed down as a not expressed thing, but it is a thought form that takes a part of your consciousness. It goes into strand 2 template and hangs out there. It becomes part of your subpersonality imprint in the emotional body level of your being. Now, if there's problems and there's a lot of repression of your own desires, you will find you build a monster. You create a huge shadow self there that's going to fight for your energy. This is what happens with people who go into split personality, where they literally have so many conflicting parts of themselves stuffed down the subconscious. They all come up through the DNA template as energy blobs at different times to take control. And eventually they need to harmonize those. When we work with the technologies we're working with, every time we run a round table, for instance, we're still conducting a healing on ourselves. Because when we run the D12 current, we're resetting again the divine blueprint in our body template. When we reset the divine blueprint, we are also taking those portions of self that are running in twisted, distorted, fragmented patterns and progressively giving them the divine blueprint to reassemble themselves among. So what we are doing is up-leveling the subconscious mind into the conscious. That's why you will find when you do spiritual development, or especially if you play with round tables, where you're not only doing your own Merkaba stuff, which runs more frequency, you're doing it in a group, which amplifies the heck out of everybody's frequency. You may find emotional issues coming up. You may find you want to go home and cry for no reason. You may find if you had any astral field implants or anything, that things are trying to get at you. Run your Maharic seal. That will block that out. But you will find a healing taking place of these parts of yourself that get you tied up in non-loving type engagements with people. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to absolutely love somebody who chooses to call you their enemy. That is one of the biggest challenges, to honestly, sincerely love them so much that if you could do anything that would genuinely help them, you would do it just as much for them as you would your own child. This is how we feel about the Archangel Michael matrix and people who are taking negative stances against us. That is what it's about, what Christos love is about. Being able to look at your worst enemy, that somebody decided they were going to victimize you, let's say. If you feel victimized in your life, that's a pattern, a two-way pattern. Victim-victimizer. There'll be the victimizer person that you feel persecuted by. That is going to be the hardest person to actually love because you feel persecuted. If you can realize that you can change every victim-victimizer thing by recognizing that you're creating a hologram. If you are playing victim, you are creating that victimizer. They're serving the role for you well, and that doesn't mean that they're right and it's all your fault. But it means by changing your own stance and refusing to play victim, going into self-love, setting your boundaries and not allowing them to be shifted, you will find victim-victimizer disappears. It's only when we continue to repeat the patterns. These are patterns that have been ingrained in us since childhood, and not just since childhood, they're coming through from the other time vectors. So a discussion of love is very important because love has everything to do with being able to, or not able to, hold personal power. If you want to hold your personal power as an avatar, you cannot do it without love, without embodying love. You will not be a very effective avatar if you use intellect and knowledge, but you do not have the wisdom that comes of the ability of loving. Loving, again, is simple. There is a physics reality to love. State of vibrational harmonization equals, in the body terms, state of chemical harmonization. People that feel in the love space with each other, their body chemicals are actually resonating in the same spaces, not just their templates. So you can create this type of resonance. The human body was designed to be able to experience full love with 12 dimensions of reality minimum. That means you could become a tree. You could literally move your consciousness into a tree and feel how the tree is feeling itself. You wouldn't be invading it. You're not trying to attach to it. You're just trying to comprehend it. We're born empaths, and we're taught to turn empathy off when we're very, very small because it hurts too much. If mom's mad at you and you're like 2 years old, and all of a sudden mom gets really mad and overreacts to something, and you can feel everything mom feels, and all of a sudden mom wants to whack you but's doing everything she can to not hit you, That gets scary as a little person. We are conditioned to shut off our sensitivities because the world can overwhelm us. It's time to turn them back on, and it starts with a conscious choice. Choose love. If you can remember those two words when you get yourself into situations, choose love. And then choose spirit, meaning your Christos in the higher levels. Don't settle for middle spirit, the whole thing. All right? These are concepts, ideas that you can learn, but if you play with them, you can make changes in your life. Before you even get into understanding radial body dynamics and how you can actually reprogram your radial body to reprogram your DNA, which is what we'll get into by tomorrow, before you understand any of that technical stuff, it goes to the simple stuff. Love. Love yourself. Love Source. Love your connection to Source more than anything. Because that's where any potential for anything you want resolved or anything you want to experience exists within you and your connection to Source. Love that. Love others. Love the planet. Try to be a carrier. Almost like it's a history that was taken away from us. This was part of our memory that was literally blocked, almost like in the Matrix movie, where they literally had people in a virtual reality program mentally, and their bodies were hooked up to something else. We've been in this kind of situation. Our memory banks were literally shut off, so we could not perceive them from here. When they start to come back, they start to come back through the emotional body first, strand 2. You get them in feeling form first. You might not be able to see pictures or know what your name was or if you were male or female in a particular life, but you will feel an emotional resonance. And it will usually be, you'll find it starts down around the second chakra, down here, and it'll move up to here. And then sometimes up into your throat, and it'll get choked up, and that kind of thing. There's an anger that's associated with what has taken place on this planet in the last 25,000 years especially. It's a healthy anger. There is such thing as a healthy anger. It's not an anger where you're going to blame. All right? Unhealthy anger is where you're saying, you did it, it's your fault, you're bad, that kind of stuff. That's judgment. That's not love. That's not going to work. Healthy anger says, this situation is just not good. It's not good for any of us. We're going to fix this situation. It can be a fuel where you want to set right what wasn't right, but you own it, and you don't blame, even though the victim-victimizer game has gone down on this planet big time. It has. This race has been victimized by the fallen angelic races. However, we allowed this to take place, partly on a higher level for our own learning, so we could understand and get close to being like they were, as messed up and as cruel as they were. We didn't understand what that meant, so we let ourselves get that bad. That way, we could empathize. So we actually went down into the pits to join them. We let them take us there. So we could get in there, understand it, love it, heal it, and then bring them out with us. So when we go into this history and identify the victim-victimizer game, realize it's a spiritual learning game. Both sides have agreed to play. It is serious when you're in it because you can be stuck in it for a very long time. But love is the response that will allow the healing to take place. The anger is okay. If you start feeling angry or hurt or that victimization feeling, there will be a level in your emotional body that will respond to that because there's been so much pain built up in the human imprint through what has taken place on the planet. But if you can take that and realize, I'm going to heal that now, realize that the ones who played victimizers, you think this pain is bad, right? At least we have the ability to feel love. Okay? We still have some of that left. At least we have the ability to feel the presence of God with us and through us. Those are the things that give humanity its strength. Imagine races of beings who have lost the ability to hold those frequencies, where honestly and truly they walk around in their existences, they develop their mental bodies and get very, very intellectual. They understand mechanics of things, but they cannot feel the vibration of love. Things are just things to move around and create. It is a type of consciousness. You think of sharks. You know how sharks are? Do you ever see the photographs, the underwater photographs where they show sharks swimming, and you get the look in that eye? It's like this dead look, all right? Sharks are eating vessels. They think about consuming. They don't feel an ability to that warm, fuzzy feeling we call love. They just be. Now, sharks aren't antichristos. They're beings, but they have templates that don't have a lot of coding in it like the human coding does. It's because of our 12-strand coding that we have the ability to experience greater and greater amounts of love. So the people, the beings who have victimized us in this civilization over the thousands and thousands of years. These are beings who once upon a time were like us. They were Christos founders races too, once upon a time. And they ended up using creativity in a way that created unfortunate results that even they hadn't planned on. They got stuck in those results to the point where they can't feel the connection to anything, and so they feel no remorse when they abuse other things. You can see this consciousness sometimes when you see interviews of serial killers, where they'll look right in the camera and say, yeah, I did this, and they'll describe it in detail, almost like enjoying it again. And they have utterly no remorse for the pain or horror they caused to another being. They just don't feel it. When we talk about fallen angelic races, many, many of them are in that space. So we might look at ourselves as victims if we get stuck in that, but that's not where to go. We are still fortunate. We are still carrying the ability to love, the ability to heal, the ability to care, the ability to know Source directly. They are suffering worse than we ever have because they are completely unaware that that potential exists anymore. So who is really the greatest victim? They were victims as well. Victims become victimizers. In the victim-victimizer game, it always happens. If a person gets pushed around enough or feels that they're being pushed around enough, they feel that they don't have the power to change what's going on, they will eventually lash back and become the victimizer in one form or another. This has happened with the human race as well. There have been times when our races got entangled with being the victimizers before they'd come and victimize us again. It still creates a vicious circle of warring and power struggle. Love is where you can stand in the middle of it and say, I choose love now, and I bring my Christos frequency in, and I bring that awareness with me. I hold tough love, I hold soft love, I hold omni love right now. And I know that I am the manifester of my hologram. This is key. If you think that you can see anything in 3D reality that is not in your DNA, you don't get it yet. All right? That means we're all programmed into each other's DNA, or we would not see each other. This comes from our tribal shield, the race DNA imprint. Okay? We are literally programmed. Everything we see is a part of ourselves. That means we have the power to heal it inside, and it will change the hologram outside. You can heal other people, actually, by doing this. At least your experience of them. You can't inflict your will on someone else and zap, you're healed, you're perfect. That would be an infringement on their lessons, as their spiritual lessons that they're teaching themselves. However, you can go and realize every person you see is a symbol person, as well as a real person. They are a symbol that's coming from a piece of your DNA template. It represents something to you. They are a part of your consciousness, that all the beliefs they have, all the ideas they have, all the illnesses or non-illnesses they have, what they are, what they symbolize, is a part of you objectified, a part that you couldn't hold in your body. Remember, you're God, okay? God is one being that put itself in a multitude of forms, and literally they're all coded within each other's DNA template. You can begin a healing process by finding the part of your DNA template that connects to each element of the hologram that you would like to heal, and begin bringing the D12 frequency through it, simply running D12 frequency through it. There are techniques that we can get into. At some point we probably will in the Dance of Life course, because that's like the personal day-to-day spiritual development course that like is the third level of this. But for now, I just wanted to bring fully into our awareness as we go into the technicals that this is coming from a love base and a love space, and it's a choice. That if you find yourself feeling funny or feeling upset or aggravated, when you start hearing, agitated is a better word, when you start feeling the history and seeing the history, seeing the deception that has taken place, remember the L word. I'm going to choose love. Yeah, even if I don't, it made sense before, but right now I don't feel it, right? Because if you get caught up, the emotion starts coming up, you can say, well, I choose love, and that made sense to me when I didn't feel this, but right now it's becoming very difficult to feel loving. Just keep choosing it. Just the choice alone will bring in more of your Christos frequency that will help to harmonize that, and you'll begin to know the lesson. In every negative, or thing that seems or feels negative, there is a lesson that you agreed to have that negative exposure so you could learn the lesson from it. you can learn the lesson, as they say, the soul taps you on the head with feathers or sledgehammers, depending on what you need, you know. I opt for feathers whenever possible and simply say, well, okay, what is the lesson here? Okay, I feel lousy. What is the lesson here? And what is my best course of fixing this in divine right order? Divine right order meaning within the divine blueprint. So as we will move forward now. I will do a brief reading on, just so we know who's who in the wonderful world of the guardian races. So we know who we're talking to, we're talking about, and talking with. And from there, we'll go into mechanics. Let me find my page here. Yes?
Aren't they, wouldn't a dark avatar or something, aren't they smart enough to know that their end result is space dust?
Yeah.
Why do they want to...
Because there's an if.
They're arrogant.
There's an if, okay? Dark avatars know that the end result for them will be space dust if they cannot continue to suck life force energy off living matrices. So therefore, they put all of their energy and intelligence into finding ways to suck life force off of living matrices. And eventually, if it gets too bad, and it's going to literally take a living matrix and pull it in to a phantom matrix, to a dark avatar matrix, at that point, Source, there's a built-in program within the 15-dimensional matrix. Because it would infringe upon free will, which was the original agreement that they all made, if that matrix was completely destroyed, Source will intervene, and there will be a closing of, a shutting off of those currents. So it's like a balance. Sometimes the dark side will, pull in a lot of energy, and then the pendulum will swing back the other way. There will be a balance. But they know. They know that they are going to be space dust and evolve into fragmented portions of units of consciousness and no longer remember themselves or be able to hold power that way. And that's why they vampire. It's energy vampiring. They suck living life force currents off of living matrices. And that's what the game is all about for them. Okay? Now, all right, this thing, this section here, I found in my book. I don't know if it was corrected yet in your book. There was a page that was out of order. So it made it hard to read. Let me see where that was. They have been fixed? Okay. All right, so that should be all right then. I'm just going to read this to you really quickly so we get an idea. There is a hierarchy here as far as who's in higher frequencies and who's in lower frequencies, but it is not a hierarchy like some of the Anunnaki teachings will tell you. It is not a hierarchy of lords of this and lords of that above that. It's not a hierarchy of the big ones on top control and manipulate the little ones on bottom. It's not a hierarchy like our governments tend to do. It is a hierarchical structure only in the sense that certain frequencies are higher than others, and that allows for more consciousness to be held within forms within those frequencies. But the ones that have the advantage, say our Rishi levels of identity that are stationed in density 5, dimensions 13, 14, and 15, our Rishis do not look at us as little playthings down here to manipulate. They don't impose their will on us. They know that we are aspects of themselves created with free will. So they will assist us whenever possible to expand into the greatest that we can be, because they experience and learn through us. So we're beloved and loved to them. So when we talk about the structure of who's in the higher dimensions, who's in the middle, who's in the lower dimensions, it's not about the power struggle games that are created out of elitist hierarchy. It is not an elitist hierarchy. There may be a difference in developmental level between beings, but there is no difference in worth, in intrinsic worth. They are all equal. They are all faces of God, even the fallen angelics, all of them. So this is known. When I talk about the hierarchy here, the ones in the highest up in the hierarchy are the ones who understand that the most. And the ones on the lower end, which means they're just smaller body forms holding smaller amounts of consciousness, they understand to the degree they can hold that they are loved and they are blessed and they are worthy and they are free. The ones that would be on the lowest end of the scale right now will be the avatars and ascended masters running around down here. We're running around down here trying to get our memories back, trying to get our DNA opened, but there's parts of ourselves that we're directly connected to that are up there in these other organizations that I'm going to talk about.